Brilliant. Okay, Vanessa, welcome to the Torbay Property Meet. It goes about saying you're one of the most high-profile people in UK property. Do you want to give our attendees a bit of background about yourself, your career, and how you got into property?
Well, how far back do you want to go? Probably
To the very beginning.
Most people probably know that in a previous life I was a MTV VJ, which is a presenter on Music Television Europe in the golden era of MTV, where I specialised in presenting rock music, and there was a very long-running show called Headbangers Ball, and I had the accolade of being the longest serving VJ in MTV history. So I had a fantastic life, traveling all over the world, interviewing bands, attending concerts, etc. And unfortunately, MTV changed its entire format and programming, and they cancelled all their specialist and niche music programming. So that was me made redundant, which came as a massive shock to me because I'd been VJing on MTV for 10 years, which is a long time in the history of MTV, believe me. It's a very fast moving environment. So I like to say that I went from rock and roll to bricks and mortar, because I went behind the scenes just directing music programming, big music specials. I directed Motorhead's 25th anniversary concert from Brixton Academy, for instance. I did a big music special on Channel 4 about the Latin pop music scene, which we filmed in Miami with Ricky Martin, Enrique Iglesias, Christina Aguilera, Jennifer Lopez. So yes, it was all wonderful. But you know, the music industry was changing, and YouTube was coming forward, and it was getting harder and harder to get commissions, and I was working longer and longer hours. And then I met my wonderful husband Nick, and he said, you know, what are we going to do? My husband was a cameraman, and we kind of went off on a cruise to the Caribbean to kind of discuss our future together. And Nick said, well, what about property? You know, we can't go on working all these hours, 14, 15 hours a day, in an edit suite. There's no windows, you're in a black hole. And, you know, it is a stressful existence. And Nick said, well, what about property? And that was when the idea was kind of seeded to get started in property. So I'm a lot more interested in property than Nick. He's much more interested in the tech and geeky side of things. So we started building our portfolio in 2004. And to cut a long story short, we've just carried on building it, and we now have a portfolio of flats in North and East London. We've got family homes in what I call the M3, M4 corridor, places like High Wycombe and Basingstoke. Have 2 coastal holiday lets, and we have some stock up north in Leeds and Manchester area. So we were doing that quite happily, and then in 2009, I said to my husband one day, do you know what, there's nowhere professional online to talk about property, and we regarded being a landlord as a business. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll set up some free software for you, and you can chat to your property friends on there, and then you can have the environment that you like, the learning environment that I was looking for. And he did that, and here we are 11 years later with Property Tribes, has over 70,000 members, and we have one of the busiest and most active property communities in the UK, and our YouTube channel has over 1.3 million views. So it's a very big channel for landlord learning and discussion and communication and news and opinion. And that brings us pretty much up to date.
Brilliant. Now, you've obviously identified you've got quite a sizable portfolio. We're in quite a unique time in, if you like, world history, really. How have you coped with being in lockdown as a landlord?
I have to say, to be honest, it hasn't been very much different to our normal existence, because we work from home anyway. We have a home office, and we don't have to worry about commuting. I think the only real difference it made to us, and again, I have to be very thankful to property for this, is that we weren't able to go to the gym, we weren't able to go outside very much, and we're very, very outdoorsy people, and we weren't able to go off in in our motorhome having adventures with our cats, which is what we do on a regular basis. So that was actually only the real difference. And I have to say, from the property perspective, it was very fortunate that I touch wood, because it's obviously we're now in a third lockdown. I haven't experienced any arrears at all. I had one tenant that asked for 2 months at 50% discount, and then a payment plan after that, which they made up quicker than the payment plan we agreed. And so far, I've got no voids, and all my tenants are paying on time. So, I'm very lucky to be able to say that I'm surviving lockdown quite well, and we do enjoy going out for our everyday walks, as I think it's really important to do, all of us, for our kind of mental well-being.
No, definitely. Now, you've said that you're pretty lucky in many ways that you've not really had any major challenges. Was that because you had systems in place beforehand that are pretty much COVID-proof?
I think it was really the quality of the properties that we have, and the quality of the tenants. I've always subscribed to quality over quantity. For instance, we have a very large 4-bed house in High Wycombe that's actually about twice the size of our own 4-bed house here in Guildford. I certainly wouldn't mind living there myself. We have a very nice designer townhouse in Basingstoke, designed by Red or Dead. I don't know if you've heard of the fashion designers, but they designed this development, and it's really trendy and funky, and we've got a 4-bed house there. And our flats in London, they're 1 and 2 beds, and they're always popular, particularly if they've got good transport links, etc. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's so much that we've systemized anything, although we do believe in systemization, and we do use portfolio management software. I think it's a combination of quality properties, quality tenants, and also working with quality lettings agents as well. And all of our properties are fully managed. I prefer it that way, but I do intense due diligence on any potential letting agent. And in fact, the very first apartment that we bought in London in 2004 is still managed to this day by the same agent.
Wow. So all your properties are managed by agents, is that correct?
That's right, Ed, yeah.
Now, obviously, this originated in Torbay, this event, and you've got 2 holiday lets. The holiday industry has been very badly hit by COVID. So have they coped all right in the circumstance, those particular properties?
Yeah, they've done actually very well. Obviously, we were in lockdown until early July, and then the hospitality sector reopened. So I had a very completely full calendar for the whole of the summer, right through into early October. And then I had a 2-week booking in December over Christmas for somebody that was arriving in the UK but needed to self-isolate. So they booked one of them for 14 days, 14 nights. So, to be honest, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, I do believe that the holiday lettings sector is going to enter an absolute golden era now, because nobody wants to travel. I certainly don't want to be getting on a plane or going through busy airports. And I think we're going to see a massive resurgence in the UK tourist industry and people holidaying at home, and also the continuing rise of a trend that was existing before COVID-19, and that was the staycation, which is people taking long weekends. Our holiday lets have done very well since we've had them since 2009, because they were the last bit of our portfolio that we developed. We were very keen to get a good solid foundation of single occupancy buy to let, good cash flowing properties, and then we kind of diversified a little bit, and that's when we just rounded off our kind of buying phase with these holiday lets.
Do you ever pursue a strategy of having them as holiday lets in the summer, but if you like, serviced accommodation in the winter, because that's a really good way of filling void periods. Have you tried that?
I haven't needed to be honest, actually, Ed. They've done very well, just as normal holiday lets. So they're both coastal, and I'm sure you've got loads of opportunity for holiday lets in your part of the world.
Indeed.
And you know, on top of that, we're seeing this. I don't know if it's a mini trend or a sustainable trend, but we are seeing certainly a lot in the media about people realizing that they're not going to be working in an office anytime soon, or even companies saying you only need to come in 1 or 2 days a week. So people are thinking, well, actually, I don't need to be that commutable anymore, and they're thinking about going to the coast for all the benefits of that. So I suspect that certainly on a price point, that coastal property will remain very robust, as it did during the last recession in 2008. Our properties didn't particularly go down, and they recovered quite quickly. So, it's all boding very, very well for coastal property, and indeed, holiday lets themselves. And, I think the other interesting thing is, and this is proven, and I actually read an article about it a couple of days ago, that in times of recession or depression, people hark back to nostalgia, and they want to look back at what made them happy in the past. And so many people are revisiting their own childhoods of donkey rides and candy floss and fun fairs, and thinking, well, actually that's what I'm going to do with my kids now. So we're definitely going to see a huge growth in the holiday let sector, and of course they're not subject to Section 24, so that's another big reason to consider them.
In fact, now that's a very, very good point, Vanessa. For those people who are maybe a bit newer to the industry here, do you want to explain what Section 24 is, and why a lot of, if you like, traditional buy-to-let investors went down the holiday let route because of it?
Yes, well, Section 24 is an extremely onerous tax regime brought in by George Osborne in 2015, and it was rolled out kind of in tranches, so it didn't come in all in one hit immediately. There was a rollout over 4 years, it just means that you can't claim your mortgage interest relief against your tax return. So it's made the margins in buy-to-let a lot slimmer, particularly if you are a higher rate taxpayer. And that's why we're seeing so much incorporation at the moment, because people are trying to get away from the impact of Section 24. And holiday lets, as I say, is it doesn't apply to them. They're classed as a different category in a tax perspective.
Very well explained. And when I actually first started property networking, Section 24 had just come in, and when I was property sourcing, I actually found a lot of big portfolio landlords were exiting because of Section 24. Now, you've obviously identified as well that buy-to-let landlords are facing challenges. You perhaps been a bit more fortunate than a lot of them. One particular challenge a lot of my friends who are buy-to-let landlords have faced is the issue of evictions. What advice would you give our audience, some of which will be affected by this issue, if they want to evict a tenant in, shall we say, this particular time?
Well, obviously, the eviction ban was extended just earlier this week, I think it was. So it's not possible at the moment. It's still 6 months notice. If you take into account the backlog of court hearings, you're talking potentially 1 to 2 years to get into a courtroom to get a Section 21 eviction. So it's extremely challenging. As I say, I am fortunate. I don't have any issues in that regards yet, but I'm going to touch some wood because it could change. It's really about maintaining tenancies through good communication with your tenants. And I think that those landlords that have maintained good relationships, have nurtured tenancies and relationships, they will be able to weather this storm far better than those landlords that have never had any interaction with their tenant and have been very, not shown any empathy for them, because we are all in this same boat together. And I think, you know, if you are suffering arrears, the first thing to do is to try and establish the position of your tenant. There are many government support measures, such as the furlough scheme. There's housing benefit should it become necessary. I do accept that some people have slipped through the government support net, and I do feel for them terribly. But there is a lot of support measures out there for tenants. Find out what their situation is, and just say that you understand, that you want to work with them, and try and you know, find a way forwards, whether it's a slight rent decrease or a payment holiday or something like that. Just try and keep the tenancy sustained, because you aren't going to be able to evict them anytime soon, and you certainly you know, want to keep, if they've previously been, particularly if they've previously been a good tenant, you want to keep them in situ, because life has, you know, thrown us all an absolutely massive curveball. So that would be my advice, to find out what government support measures if they're not already accessing them, to actually try and help signpost them to where they could get some support, and try and keep the tenancy going, and try and keep them in the home. That would be my advice. Of course, if there's any other serious issues, like they're not willing to engage with you or communicate with you, or you fear that there's other, you know, instances of that causing concern, such as, you know, like domestic abuse or something, then you are going to have to think about how you're going to get that tenant out. And I would definitely seek professional advice in that kind of instance from a company such as, say, Landlord Action, who just specialise in that type of work, or indeed other solicitors that have experience of this. But there's no easy solution at the moment, and it's very disconcerting for landlords, because one of the things that is absolutely paramount to landlords is knowing that they can get possession of their properties should they need to, and you know, COVID's turned that on its head.
Very much so. Now, you've obviously identified tenant management is key to this, and you've clearly been very shrewd when you've picked your tenants. How would you describe your tenants' profile in general, if it's possible?
It depends really, because in the London flats, I've got you know, I know it's a cliche, but young professionals. They're generally people that work in the financial sector. And they haven't been too badly affected by this. In the houses, it's mainly families. There may be two wage earners in the family. They may, you know, I imagine some of them have had a few issues. I know in the house in Basingstoke, they worked in the insurance industry, both the couple in the house, and they had to go on to furlough for a couple of months. So yeah, I think it's just, again, robust tenant referencing. It's always been absolutely vital, but never more so in this environment that we're in now. If you are, you know, taking on a new tenant, you really have to do really intense due diligence on them.
So what sort of due diligence have you done that's maybe a bit different from your average landlord? Because you're obviously very good at doing it. How is yours different, would you say?
Well, I would say it's more my agents that are good at doing it. I only work with agents that are compliant to all the mandatory regulations, such as being a member of an independent redress scheme. And I also only work with agents that have voluntarily committed to professional standards by joining trade bodies such as ALA or Safe Agent, or there's a couple of other bodies out there. And when I choose an agent, I think it's almost, I'm doing more due diligence on the agent, because they've got to represent me. They are an agent. They are my representative to the tenant. So I want to work with agents that deal with tenants in the way that I would myself. So that's why I meet them and I get a feel for them. You know, I want to know that they're going to be proactive in dealing with repairs. They're going to be proactive in chasing rent, and so on and so forth. In this day and age, though, if you are a self-managing landlord, you can now use digital tenant referencing. We have a partner called Cubic Lease, and that actually opens up open banking, so you can get an instant snapshot of the tenant's financial position.
Wow.
within seconds. And the power of that is it's now. It's their financial position today on the 12th of January, whereas normal analog tenant referencing is usually kind of slightly in the past. And clearly, you know, in COVID, you're not going to be able to get, or certainly it's going to take longer to contact former employers or former landlords, that kind of thing. So some of the analog processes that were in favour pre-COVID, that they're taking a lot longer now. So this is, you know, why I think digital tools are so good, and why they're going to get some real traction going forwards, because COVID has definitely highlighted the benefits of them.
So, time for the $1 million question now, and it is on the subject of COVID. What do you think property will be like post-COVID?
Well, when's post-COVID?
Exactly. Let's talk hypothetically. Let's say if the vaccination program works and the pandemic's declared over, say, in 2022, what do you think property will be like?
I don't know. I mean, if I had to, you know, polish off my crystal ball now, I would say, first of all, I think there's going to be a massive fall off of a cliff at the end of March when the stamp duty holiday ends. I think that I already saw reports today that loads of sales are falling out of bed. People are worried that they're not going to complete. I think, you know, the stamp duty holiday should really be more of a tapering kind of scenario rather than a cliff edge. So we've got that to contend with. We've got Brexit to contend with. We've got the end of furlough to contend with. A lot of people sitting on furlough don't know that they don't have a job to go back to. They're going to find out, unfortunately, that they don't. A lot of people who probably are vulnerable to COVID will not want to go back to work. They'll want to stay at home, understandably. So my outlook is not optimistic, as you can probably tell. I think none of us have ever experienced a pandemic before, so it's so hard to say. What I will say is I still hold true to the fundamentals of property investment, why I got started in it in the first place. I haven't lost any kind of faith with that, but I think we're going to go through very challenging times. There may be a sort of massive switch of the demand and supply balance, where there tends to be more supply than there is demand. You know, we've got to see if all these trends of people exodusing the cities and moving to the coast and not wanting to live in flats anymore because there's no outside space. You know, we've got to wait to see if those really get embedded, because very often when there's a crisis, and this is my experience of different types of crisis, it's very acute in the first few days or the first phase, and then it all kind of just starts to settle down. People start to understand it. They start to stop worrying a bit. They see a way forwards. And I think, you know, if you make a knee-jerk decision, or, you know, it's something kind of drastic decision in the kind of acute phase of a crisis, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should let the world turn a few times and let things settle down and see, you know, how the land lies, and make a decision where you're not like massively stressed because you're in a crisis situation. So yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting times ahead. I think, you know, the landlords that you know, have professionalized their business, who are informed, who do keep up to date with all that's happening in the sector, I think they'll stand a far better chance of survival than those that are not in the loop at all.
Definitely. Now, one thing I did see today was that the government is considering stopping house viewings. Can you see that happening? And and if it does, how will the market be affected, do you think, long term?
Well, I think, you know, one of the things that we have to be grateful for is that unlike the first lockdown in spring last year, the government has kept the housing market open. And we're very fortunate in that. And I thank my lucky stars every day. You know, people have kept moving. And I think it shows how important our industry is in the economic importance to the government, that they're keeping it open, they're keeping construction sites open, and so on. I also saw the kind of hint that the market might be closed. Yes, it will have an impact, but again, we can look to something like digital viewings, where people can view a property online. They can do a fully immersive experience online. And I've heard actually today, I was talking with an agent earlier, and he says that he has completed 40 lets without the tenant physically visiting the property. So, where there's a will, there's a way. Necessity is the mother of invention, and people will find a way through it and will find solutions. And I think many of those solutions will be, digitally based.
One other thing you did mention that I think is very important is people exodusing from the city to the countryside. Can you therefore see a building boom in the countryside that as developers can potentially profit from? Couldn't resist asking that.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure about this trend. I think, I came across a new term yesterday on social media. It's called doom scrolling. And it's where you're just scrolling through your feeds and everything is doom. And I think it's really important to take a back step again away from that. And you asked me earlier about surviving lockdown. Well, one of the things that Nick and I have decided to do right from the beginning is not listen to the Daily Whale and all the the tabloids that are just desperate to grab at eyeballs and hyping up everything. I suspect a small minority of people who were maybe thinking of moving anyway might have used that as the catalyst to change their lives. But until we know that trend's really embedded, I don't know. I think our cities are very strong. They have a lot of inward investment planned. There's still evidence of interest from build to rent operators, pension funds, etc. They're not going to be building new developments if they don't think people are going to be living in the cities. So I'm going to say keep your powder dry. If you're looking for angles, I definitely think coastal property is definitely something to consider, whether you're thinking of doing a refurbishment and turning it into a holiday let, or you just want to do a buy to sell, or whatever it might be. I think there will be an enhanced demand for coastal property going forwards. And we've only got so much coastline. And the other thing about coastal property is that generally in the past, traditionally, it's been a place where people retire to. So a lot of the property owned on the coast is older people who have sold the family home and bought their retirement home in cash. So these places, they don't, they're not so subject to economic changes, in my opinion. So I think there's a lot of opportunity on the South Coast and anywhere that's within a 2-hour drive of a major population density, because then you can benefit from those long weekends that I mentioned earlier.
Well, what you're saying will be music to the ears for a lot of people at this event, because I don't know if you know about Torquay. Torquay's heyday was very much, pre, the 80s, before package holidays showed up. And then, shall we say, it's faced its fair share of problems. We actually have a local councillor at this meeting tonight, a good friend of mine. So that will be music to the ears for a lot of people.
I think we just have to appreciate what an amazing coastline we have. And I think, magazines like Coast and the programme Coast have gone a long way to remind people of what an incredible coastline we have, and so many different coastlines, from 7 miles of sandy beaches like at Camber Sands to the really rocky, dramatic coastlines of Scotland, and everything in between. So we're very fortunate to have all these different wonderful coast environments, which I think we all agree that being able to see the sea, I know for myself, it always, it's always where I'm my happiest, with a sea view. And we're always out and about in our motorhome, and we come down to to Devon and Torquay and the Devon coast and everywhere along there. And I think there's so much potential there. And we've got to sing about how wonderful our coastline is and all our boutique shops, and how you can have this incredible holiday with fine dining and lovely walks. And there's so much we need to shout about our own country. And I get very sad when I see on social media that people that obviously didn't agree with Brexit are really talking our country down, like they want it to fail. We've got so much going for us in this country, and we should celebrate that.
So do you think Brexit then will help the holiday let industry in a nutshell?
Yeah, I think it will. It was, I can't see why the holiday let industry is not going to thrive. You've got to buy right, and that's probably something we'll talk about in the separate rooms. But coastal property, not necessarily holiday lets, it could be any type of strategy. I just think coastal holiday lets coastal property, everybody should have some in their portfolio. I don't think they'll regret it.
Now, obviously, earlier you spoke about your website, Property Tribes. It's a very, very good property resource. For somebody new to property, do you want to explain how Property Tribes might be able to help them if they're a complete newbie?
Yeah, well, what a wonderful question. First of all, I have to credit my husband Nick as the co-founder of Property Tribes. It's really his baby more than mine. I'm just like the front person, if you like. If you compare it to a pub, then I'm the lady behind the bar that welcomes you and helps you find your way around the pub and so on. And Nick's upstairs in the back office running everything. So that's really what it's like. Yes, it's just a community of people that are interested in property investment. And it's really based on the premise that none of us is as smart as all of us. And that means that you can tap into other people's knowledge and experience. And it can actually mean that somebody else's hindsight becomes your foresight. So you can learn from the mistakes of other people, you can get your questions answered, you could put a deal on there and ask the community to critique it. You could put a floor plan on there and say, how would you, carve up this flat or this house? So it's just the most amazing resource. And it's all down to the people that we have contributing there every day. We get on average about 4,000 visitors a day and between 20 and 25,000 page views a day, which is a lot.
Definitely.
And I learn something from it every day. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in learning and growing as a landlord and being a better landlord. And I'm so grateful to all the people that comment on there who help me learn and grow as well. So we have high community standards. And we maintain them. People can post there in confidence. And I'm always on there. I'm on there from 8 in the morning, usually till 10 or 11 at night. And I'm not on there because it's a job. It's because I actually enjoy being the community manager and helping people and directing them to the resources on there. So yes, it's just a great place for anybody who's interested in property to join. It's free to join and just dive in and immerse yourself in property.
For those of you that don't know, it's obviously www.propertytribes.com, and you've also got some great sponsors as well, don't you? Who's your main sponsor?
Well, it's monetized through an advertising model. So all our different tribes, so everything, the whole concept of tribes came from somebody called Seth Godin, who's an American marketeer and somebody that Nick and I follow. We think that he's incredible. He's an incredible thought leader. So I do recommend sethgodin.com, join his blog, because he will create a blog that can be sometimes only one sentence, but it encapsulates everything that he wanted to say. He's an absolutely brilliant guy. He came up with this idea of people hanging out in tribes, and they do. Tribes are very established societal formats, and a tribe is a format where everybody works together for the greater good of the tribe. And you'll have a cat lovers tribe, you'll have a golf lovers tribe, you'll have a hiking tribe, and you might be a member of many different tribes. I'm a motorhomer tribe, I'm a cat lovers tribe, I'm an outdoors hiking tribe person as well. So we really wanted to create a place where these tribes could hang out. And then property tribes is in different silos. So you'll have the HMO tribe, the legal tribe, the buy-to-let tribe, the holiday-lets tribe, the rent-to-rent tribe, the service accommodation tribe. And so it's all very niche silos where you can go and talk on that particular topic. And each category is sponsored by a partner who offers a service connected with that activity. So I wouldn't say we've got a main sponsor. We've got, I think we must have over about 40 sponsors now, and they have different types of presence on the site. But you'll see that it's a very good ecosystem of trusted products and services for landlords, because we do due diligence on any potential sponsor before we decide to work with them. And any sponsor that comes on, it's another level of accountability, because we tell all our sponsors that they've got to stand on their own 2 feet. And if somebody comes on and says, do you know what, I've had a really bad experience with so-and-so bank, then the sponsor is accountable to that, and they have to come on and say, you know, sorry to hear that, what's your issue, how can we help you solve it? We don't protect them or you know, stop them having negative feedback if indeed that is the case. And I think that gives that level of transparency gives an extra level of confidence in using the products and services of property tribes. And I think it's quite unique.
Very much so, very much so. Okay, now I believe our audience has some questions for you. Peter, I think you had a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask Vanessa it?
You caught me just eating my supper. Maybe you could just read the question out. That would be great.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so what Peter asked you, Vanessa, is he wants to know specifically more about your holiday let. Whereabouts is it actually based, and can you send a link to it on Airbnb?
I can send a link to it on the agent's website, because they aggregate it to Airbnb and Booking.com and all the other OTAs. But I've got 2 holiday lets. One is at Camber Sands Beach in near Rye in East Sussex. It's actually just across the road from the sand dunes and 7 miles of sandy beach and shallow water. Great for families and kids. It's within a 2-hour commute of central London. So you can be on the decking drinking your glass of wine by 8 o'clock at night if you left at 6 on a Friday evening from London. And yeah, it's in a really lovely award-winning development of, it's a bit, I don't know if anybody knows what the Hamptons looks like, but it's all kind of cladded houses and fishermen's cottages and landscaping. It's a little 2-bedroom cottage in there, and I love it because it's blue. And blue is my favourite colour. It's blue cladded property. And, you know, it's joking apart, it really jumps out in the pictures. And so many people have said, oh, we loved our stay in the little blue house. So it's very, I call it a pocket house. It's really, really cute, beautifully proportioned and formed. And we've done it all up in a kind of seaside-y style. And then the other one is on the island of Portland in Dorset.
Oh, I know it, yeah. I know Portland very well.
Yeah, and I absolutely love Portland. It's one of my favourite places in the entire world. And we have got a 4-bed townhouse with sea views on Portland. It's actually where we're going to retire to when the time comes. So we bought it in 2008, and we hope to eventually one day live there. But again, very nicely appointed house, sea views, beautiful walks on the doorstep, and so on. And that one is not currently rented out at the moment because we had something of a family crisis and we've had to put a family member in there. But I think again that just highlights you know, how property gives you choices and options.
Brilliant. I've got another question for you, Vanessa.
Was that okay, Peter?
We're really interesting, and obviously Torbay, the rental holiday market, the Airbnb holiday market, very interesting in this part of the world. We've also got some major hotel building that local people will know about. So it's a sort of hot topic. Thank you.
Okay.
Another hot topic that we've got a question on, Vanessa, is property education. What would be the best way of getting that particular industry regulated?
I'm not sure that there is a way to get it regulated. It's like the Wild West, really, in my opinion. It's, you know, one of the best ways is community self-regulation, where people create resources to help other people make wise choices about where they go to get their education. I think, you know, everybody on this call knows that you cannot be a property millionaire in 1 year with no money. That is you being sold a ticket to see a unicorn, as I call it. So I'm not sure that there is a way. Just making sure that people understand how to undertake due diligence on a potential trainer, and to see if they're really the right person for them. Personally, I rate the National Residential Landlords Association. They have a training program. Their courses are like £30 or something, not £30,000, as we know does exist in that particular sector. And I'll be honest with you, Ed, the wealth creation sector, I don't even feel like it's my world.
No, of course.
You know, it's nothing to do with me. It's like, change the word property for Bitcoin, shares, gold. You know, it's not about being a landlord and having to adhere to over 180 government statutes and regulations, and you know, constantly being a cash hungry business. I mean, I've just had to put a new garage door on a property that was £790, and then I've got another flat that's got to be redecorated. That is, I think I got a good deal. It's a 1-bed flat, quite big, but I got it for £1,700 for a complete redecoration. You know, I've had 3 washing machines go in 1 month. That's £1,500. So, you know, to say that you don't need money for property when you have legal obligations to provide a safe and compliant home for your tenant, it is actually dangerous, because if you don't have a boiler serviced regularly and you don't undertake your gas safety certificate, you know, somebody could potentially die in your home. So we need to take this more seriously. We need government to look at it, but I can't see anything happening anytime soon. And in the lack of anything else, all there is community self-regulation, where people have had bad experiences, give substantiated commentary about that, or create due diligence resources that people can undertake due diligence with. And I've done that on Property Tribes. I've created loads of due diligence resources of how to research potential trainers or educators. It's all there for you. My very first one was, I posted, it was one of the first ever things I posted on Property Tribes in 2009, and it was called How to Avoid Becoming Property Shark Bait. And wow. I looked at it the other day, and it's 11 years on now, 12 years on, and what I wrote 12 years ago is still holding true today. And the other thing I would always suggest is, if you buy any education, buy it on your credit card, because then you are protected by Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act. And if you realise that you did not get what you paid for, or you have indeed been scammed, then you can reclaim that cost from the credit card provider. So that does give you a level of protection.
Okay, anyway, we got time for one more question. Any volunteers? Anyone got a question for Vanessa? Andy followed by John. I have 2 more. Andy Thomas followed by John Thomas.
Vanessa, how are you doing? Thank you for that. It was amazing listening to that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Property Tribes is amazing. Hats off to you and to your husband.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I So I've got a portfolio now, and it's centralised to Liverpool. I built it, over many years. But I, like you, had a diversified portfolio across many cities and many counties. How have you found that, like being a satellite? Number one, finding the deals and managing refurbs from a distance, and then also sort of, I know you've got the agents involved, so that's self-explanatory, and you explained that quite well. But to take it a step backwards, actually sourcing them, in the different cities, and then actually finding the right teams, because I was okay at that, but now I've got a development going on in Cheadle. I've got one going on here in Leeds, which is easy, and I've got another one that's going to be going on about an hour and a half away in Curtin Lindsey. I'm okay with it, but I know there's possibly, we had a discussion about the other day about people from London wanting to bring the money up north, but the real fear was, how do we do that? So I think there's value in that. Someone who's done it so well for so long, I think there's probably some value there for a lot of people.
Well, congratulations on what you've achieved. I know that took a lot of dedication and determination and self-sacrifice and all the other stuff. I know that. I'll be honest, the units that we've purchased away from areas we knew have been the least successful. I have a 4-bed house in Manchester, which has only ever been problematic in terms of the quality of the tenant. My last tenant painted the entire house bright pink, smashed all the doors down, took all the radiators off the wall, flooded the kitchen and ruined the floor. It was a lot of damage, and he had about 4,000 rent arrears. So I work with a very good agent in the Manchester area called Make Your Move, and they scheduled the entire refurb, got 3 quotes from me from different contractors, and I was able to choose which contractor I wanted. And also I was very fortunate, and you should definitely try this, anybody listening this, is the contractor agreed to allow me to pay for it over 3 months, and the letting agent guaranteed the payment from the rent if I didn't make the payment. So that helped spread the pain quite a lot, actually. Nick has a flat in Leeds, which has been quite troubling. And the thing with flats, and people watching this will know because I ain't a fan of them these days, is one of the biggest issues with them is when you get a water leak, nobody wants to take responsibility for it. So for me now, it's houses all the way. And our most successful houses are the big family homes in the southeast, and again they have come up necessary for refurbishment, but again I'm very fortunate to work with agents that will undertake that for me. So I maybe I've been lucky, maybe I've just applied good due diligence to the agents, and so far I've survived. But I would not buy a property a long way away from home now. I think the challenges with those, and I think what Ed mentioned about COVID, I think that the risks in property are now massively amplified by COVID. We've all got to be a lot more risk averse and put into place risk mitigation, because I think they're definitely amplified. I don't know if that answered your question at all, Andy, but yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, if I can ever help you with the Manchester or Leeds ones, just reach out. I'll be happy to cast an eye over it if you need it.
Oh, thank you.
Anytime.
That's what networking is all about.
Final question from John Thomas.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that I've been in property for 40 years, and I started with a very small Coronation Street type house, which I bought for £12,000.
Oh, those were the days.
And I'm presently developing a £5 million block of flats. So basically, I have to say to you, congratulations, well done. I am highly impressed because you have been a breath of fresh air. You have put a superb lecture forward. And the one thing which I would like to impress upon anybody that's at this meeting is the fact and the truth that you have got, that you've said there is no get-rich-quick formula. Absolutely none. And unfortunately, there are a lot of sharks about and a lot of people who pay you for something which you don't really get. Well done. If there is going to be regulation from the government, I would support it 150%. But well done.
Well, John, thank you so much. That means so much to me, coming from a landlord of your 40 years experience. So I'm going to bow down to you and say thank you ever so much for your wonderful feedback. And that does mean a lot to me, because as some of you will know, I've taken a lot of online abuse for my stance against, you know, the nefarious quarter of the wealth creation industry. So to hear validation from somebody such as yourself is, you know, it means a lot to me. And I think, you know, we as a community can all work together to highlight, you know, bad practice and where promises are made but not delivered upon. So, you know, we as a community, as I mentioned, can self-regulate to quite a large extent. And to be honest, I quite feel that self-regulation is one of the healthiest forms of regulation. You know, government can put in regulations, but they just don't have the budgets to enforce them. We're seeing that with, you know, criminal landlords. There's all these regulations and landlords aren't sticking to them, and there's nobody enforcing them, even though, you know, you can be fined up to £30,000 in some cases. So, you know, we can't rely on governments. We as a sector and a community, you know, we can make a difference ourselves just by helping newbies find their way. And, you know, Property Tribes, I think it's really important to know, I welcome the opportunity to say this, Property Tribes does not dictate anything to anybody. Property Tribes is like a data bank of a huge amount of knowledge, and it's like signposts. It will signpost you to where you need to go to get that bit of information. Whatever anybody wants to do in their property world is absolutely nothing to do with me. I respect everybody's decision and the way that they take their own journey forward. All I like to do is I try and share things that help people, you know, build their knowledge and make an informed decision based on their own opinion. And it's very, very healthy to have information from multiple inputs. If you only have information from one input, which is what I would describe a property guru, it's just a singularity, it's their view, you're not allowed to consider anything else. That's very unhealthy. You need to have as many different inputs as possible. Try them all on, see what works for you, and then, you know, work it out for yourself, come to your own opinion, and you're standing in a position of responsibility when you do that. And that's incredibly healthy way to build a business. And then you can't say at the end, oh, well, it was so-and-so's fault, because you took responsibility for your decisions and you were in a position to make decisions. And we're all going to make mistakes. I mean, I know I have. And I try and share, you know, where I went wrong. Because I don't want other people to experience the pain that I experienced. So, yeah, we're very fortunate to have the online world, to have meetings like this, to have forums and groups where we can chat and learn from each other.
And we've got one final question. This is the final one before the mastermind room. So my good friend Anil, how are you doing? Anil, do you want to fire away?
Good. How are you? Vanessa, thank you for that, first of all. It's been really good. I've seen your articles in the newspapers. I think it was Telegraph or the Times. I think it was the Telegraph where they did an article about you and your traveling as well. One of the things I just want to back up and say really thank you. You saved me £350,000, by the way. So I've been in property 20 years, but I've never come onto the social media. I was on Facebook. I was only on Facebook 7 years ago. So I came into this new property community. I've done it traditional, you know, Asian way. And a guy called Glenn Armstrong approached me for 350,000. So I was like, okay, he's a cheeky chap, you know, all that kind of London thing. Typed it in. Your thing came up first, PT. If I hadn't read that, I would have probably gone for it. I read it. I read other people's posts, incredible amount of insights and comments, and I decided within an hour of reading your stuff on Property Tribe, 350k, I cancelled it straight off. So thank you for that. So it does actually help, and it did help me 7 years ago.
Oh, well, that's awesome. And obviously, you know that Mr. Armstrong's now facing bankruptcy for about 7 million.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that, well, wow, that just shows the power of community generated content. And, you know, I'm just one of 60,000 members. It's, you know, some people seem to think it's me solely creating all the content. It's not like that at all. I do write the odd article. I do obviously create video content, but it's community generated content, and that's why it's so healthy, because it can't have any bias, it can't have any agenda, because there's too many people creating it.
Thank you anyway. I'm glad you don't charge a commission on the savings.
You can buy me a coffee.
Anyway,
that's lovely. No, I'm so pleased. Thank you for telling me that. I'll tell Nick as well, because, you know, Nick, he does so much behind the scenes, and, you know, he runs Property Tribes. He comes up with the interface. He keeps moderating every day, making sure that it's a nice place to be, and maintaining our community standards. So he'll be absolutely thrilled that Property Tribes helped you in that manner.
Thank you.
Anyway, firstly, Vanessa, thank you very much for taking the questions. We're going to be doing a mastermind table shortly.